to our discussion on whether to take the lump sum or annuity option upon retirement. We will discuss the intricate details of both financial options, a presentation tailor-made for LSC Communications employees. We understand the importance of making informed financial decisions, especially given the recent termination announcement. This presentation will provide you knowledge to navigate these choices effectively. In just a moment, I will bring on our advisor, Tyson Mavar, to cover all of this with you. But before I bring him on, let me first introduce myself. My name is Samantha. I'm in Client Services here at the Retirement Group, and I moderate these weekly webinars. Before we get started, I'd like to also remind you that although we work very closely with both active and retired members of LSC Communications, we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by LSC Communications. The Retirement Group is a completely independent group of financial advisors. I'd like to also let you know that throughout his presentation, I will be putting some useful links into the chat. They will guide you to our LinkedIn, as well as a link to book an appointment with an advisor such as Tyson or one of his colleagues after this presentation. And one more thing. After Tyson's presentation, I will jump back on with him to ask him any questions you may have entered into the Q&A box throughout his presentation. Please feel free to ask away. It's 100% anonymous. We enjoy answering as many questions as we can, time permitted, of course. And with all of that out of the way now, I'd like to just introduce you to our speaker, Tyson Mavar. Hi, Tyson.
Thank you, Sam, for the introduction, and thank you, folks, for attending our webinar series today. My name is Tyson Mavar, one of the retirement specialists with the Retirement Group here in Texas. And on today's webinar series, we're going to cover one of the biggest decisions that many of our clients from Fortune 100 corporations have to make when they retire, which is how to take their pension. Most companies have a variety of different pension benefit options. And while this is in most cases an irrevocable decision, we encourage people to spend a lot of time on this decision, understanding the different pros and cons of different benefit options, the interest rate impact on lump sum payouts, how your pension changes over time, some of the timing considerations, so that ultimately you don't end up having regret about the pension option you decided. So let's get right into today's webinar series. For those of you who aren't as familiar with our company, the Retirement Group is an independent financial planning organization that specializes in helping corporate employees plan for and transition into retirement. We also manage retirement assets. We do that through Charles Schwab. However, we have a whole host of complementary services we encourage you to take advantage. In addition to these webinar series that we host throughout the year, we also have a complimentary cash flow analysis we encourage everybody to take advantage of. This is where we'll put together a retirement plan for you, taking a look at, like what we'll talk about today, whether the lump sum or one of the various annuity options might make more sense for you. How to put together a tax-efficient withdrawal and distribution strategy once you get to retirement. And what are some things that you might want to consider doing prior to retirement to have more money when you leave the company, or to potentially pay less in taxes when you leave your company and throughout retirement. So have us do this if we haven't done so yet, or have us update yours if it's been a while since we've updated your retirement cash flow analysis. And we encourage everybody to follow us on LinkedIn, as that's where we will publish and post these videos that we do, many of them specific to some of the companies who we have many clients from, going back the last 33 years that we've been in business, and some of them just generic retirement strategies and tax strategies that we found help people as they approach their transition from their company and well into retirement, especially in areas of estate planning, Social Security planning, and, like we talk about a lot, tax planning, which is where the most mistakes we see are made from people that are putting together their retirement strategy. So today we're going to talk about pension plans and pension distribution options. Now, there's many different types of pensions, but from a big picture standpoint, most pensions fit into either a defined benefit plan category or defined contribution plan category. Defined contribution plans are also commonly referred to as cash balance plans. Defined benefit plans are the older plans that are slowly disappearing, we've seen, as they produce bigger payouts, and a lot of companies are moving away from them to the more portable defined contribution or cash balance plans. Defined contribution plans are the formula-based plans wherein the company will have a formula based on your years of service, typically, your age oftentimes, and potentially age penalties. Some factor, usually it's 1.3%, 1.6% maybe. and your final average pay with the company. That's a very common defined benefit plan, and every company builds these differently. And some companies will actually have multiple plans, sometimes as a result of mergers and acquisitions, and in some cases because they've either frozen the old defined benefit plan as they've gone toward less lucrative, less beneficial defined contribution plan. In many cases, we've seen this with many of our clients. Some cases you'll have an option whether or not to switch to the new plan that comes out. And in most cases, you'll have multiple options on how to take your pension. So that's what we're going to focus on today. The most common payout options on both defined benefit and defined contribution pension plans. Now, single life annuity is what most people think about a pension. It's a lifetime guaranteed paycheck, guaranteed, of course, by the full faith and credit of your company for the rest of your life and your life alone. Now, this is a fixed payment. It is incredibly rare for any corporate pension to have a cost of living adjustment associated with it. So typically, once you start taking that pension, that monthly amount is not going to change for the rest of your life. What's also pretty common with these single life annuity payouts is that they are going to be a function of your years of service, what you made at the company, typically toward the end of your career. And sometimes they'll have age penalties associated with them. And once you start taking that pension, you're going to be locked in at that amount for the rest of your life. And once you pass away, those payments stop. Your beneficiaries do not receive any additional payments or any lump sum payment. That's pretty common among all pension plans for Fortune 500 corporations. Now, while this is usually the largest payout option, it's not always the most popular, and there's a variety of reasons. Some of our clients have taken alternative annuity options, and in some cases, even a lump sum option on their pension, although not every company has that option. What's a pretty common option for married individuals is a joint and survivor annuity. Now, this is where your company will guarantee a stream of payments for 2 lifetimes. Now, while this is typically the employee as well as their spouse, it doesn't always have to be. Many companies don't require you to have your joint annuitant be your spouse. And we've had clients that have had a child as a joint annuitant or a partner or another family member. But in most cases, it has to be a human being with a life expectancy, because that's how the company is going to calculate how much they're going to pay not only you during your lifetime, but also your spouse or your joint annuitant during his or her lifetime. And typically, the younger your joint annuitant, the more of a discount you are going to have to take on your pension, because there's a longer joint life expectancy. Remember, the life expectancy of 2 individuals is always longer than the life expectancy of 1 individual with that same age of the joint annuitants. So these payouts are going to be smaller, and there's often several ways you could take this payout. Sometimes there's a 100% joint survivor, wherein there is no reduction to the income that your spouse or your joint annuitant will receive upon your demise or after your death. However, that's usually a pretty expensive one. During your lifetime, the discount is usually much larger in terms of how much monthly income you receive after you retire. Oftentimes, there's other options where you might not have to give up as big of a discount during your lifetime, you as the retiree. For instance, a 50% joint survivor is fairly common, where you won't have to give up as much money during your lifetime, but your spouse or your joint annuitant will see a 50% reduction in the income that they receive after you pass away. So often this is going to be a function of all of the resources that your family has, the ages at retirement, whether or not you plan to continue working. Your risk tolerance is also a determinant of what's likely going to be the best option for you to take. Many different variables in this decision, and that's why we run that retirement cash flow analysis to compare different options, but then talk to you about your big picture. What are some of the values that you have in retirement? What do you plan on spending money on? How's your health? How's longevity in your family? What's your risk tolerance? What types of investments are you comfortable with? there's a variety of different variables that go into the optimal solution for each individual. And you're not always going to give it right, because the reality is we don't know how long any of us are going to live. We also don't know exactly how well our investments are going to perform. And those are pretty two important variables to at least have some understanding of before selecting which option you take on your pension. But there's a variety of others that we want to know about as well. Whether or not you plan to continue working after you leave your corporation that you have the pension from is a pretty big one. Your tax bracket status is also relevant in this decision. So putting it on paper, we found, is helpful to evaluate all of the options and then come to terms with what's likely going to give you the highest probability of the most amount of money during retirement. Now, lump sums have been very popular, especially for the last decade, for a variety of different reasons. And that's where the company is going to give you the present value lump sum of what they would otherwise expect to pay you as a single life annuity for the rest of your life. Now, as you can imagine, there's some variables in how much they would pay you. The big one, of course, is your life expectancy. The longer you live, the more the company expects they would have to pay you. And this is why life expectancy actually goes into the lump sum calculation for defined benefit plans. Usually it does not for defined contribution or cash balance plans, because typically those equate to a lump sum to begin with. Whereas defined benefit plans formulas equate to an annuity, which they have to convert into a lump sum. And the way that they do that is by looking at your life expectancy and also looking at current interest rates. So the younger you are, typically the bigger the lump sum payout is going to be, because you have a longer life expectancy. That's, of course, assuming that all other variables are held equal in terms of your years of service with your company, your salary. The younger you are, the more money they have to give you as a lump sum. And as it turns out, the older you are, typically the less the company is going to have to give you as a lump sum on a defined benefit plan. And that's why we see many of our clients watching their lump sum start to deteriorate. Even if they're still working with the company, you might see your lump sum falling as you get older, especially up into your mid to late 60s, or if you work into your 70s. This is where we start to see the lump sum really deteriorate, because your life expectancy is proportionally decreasing at an increasing rate. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue working, because of course there's other reasons you're continuing to work, salary being the biggest one, but it needs to be considered in this timing decision of when to leave your company as well as when to take your pension. And oftentimes the two of those decisions don't always coincide. In many cases, we actually recommend our clients defer the election of their pension for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it has to do with taxes, but life expectancy is a big component of the lump sum calculation. The other big one is interest rates. A company is going to look at current interest rates, and every company looks at these rates differently in terms of which rates they look at, the look back period, which we'll talk about how that works in a minute, and then the timing of your benefit commencement date, the rules in which you have to follow to take your pension. Now, when interest rates are low, these companies have to pay out higher lump sums because they figure that you won't be able to invest that money at as high of a rate. And as a result, they have to give you more money to essentially make you indifferent between taking the lump sum as opposed to the annuity option. When interest rates increase, however, the lump sum payments go down as a result of present value calculation. Now, we often get questions from our clients, why, when interest rates go up, does my lump sum payout go down? And the easiest way that I've found to explain this to folks is think of this as a mortgage calculation. Let's say you go to a bank, you have a certain amount of money that you've budgeted for a mortgage. Let's say it's $1,950 a month. The bank tells you the interest rates are at 4%. For a 30-year fixed mortgage, they are willing to lend you enough money to be able to afford a house that, in this case, is $408,500. So that's at a 4% interest rate. Well, let's say you go home and think about it. You come back to the bank and interest rates fell. They dropped to 3%. Well, nothing has changed to your budget, but now when interest rates have fallen, what's happened to the amount of home you can afford? Well, it's actually gone up. And this is the same logic, the same reasoning that when interest rates go down, your lump sums go up on a defined benefit plan. And alternatively, when interest rates go up, your lump sum is actually going to go down. Now, of course, we don't know where rates will go in the future. And if you predicted that interest rates would go up, you might want to take a lump sum in hopes that you would be able to invest that money at higher rates in the future. Of course, that would be a gamble and a roll of the dice if you're projecting that. In the same token, if you take a lump sum and interest rates go down, you might have taken a lump sum in an environment where the company paid you less than they could have otherwise in a lower interest rate environment. And now you actually can't go invest that money at as high of a rate as the company thought you would be able to when they produced that lump sum calculation. So we watch these very closely to help people understand not only the benefits and potential detriments of taking a lump sum, but why it could be to your advantage to do so and why it might also be a disadvantage to do so as a result of all these different variables that go into this calculation. We talked about life expectancy being a big one, risk tolerance. Your discipline is also a big one, by the way. If you're somebody that had a lot of credit card debt when you retired, maybe you had multiple loans on your 401k, or just have a tough time budgeting cash flow, the lump sum might not be the best way to go because it is your responsibility, and maybe with the help of a financial advisor, but ultimately your responsibility to budget that so that it ultimately lasts the rest of your life, ideally. Now, we talked about this look back period as it pertains to interest rates. Every company has different rules on not only which interest rates they use, although today most companies have been harmonized onto the Pension Protection Act rates, also known as the segment rates. These are interest rates that are based on corporate bonds, and there are 3 of them. And in 2006, when Congress passed the Pension Protection Act, many companies with defined benefit plans slowly moved away from the 30-year Treasury interest rate and now use 3 corporate bond interest rates. Well, each company looks at these in a different way in terms of which ones they use and how you go about electing your lump sum. For example, some companies only let you commence your benefit on the first of the month. That's pretty common, actually. Other companies might allow you to select any day. Or I have one client that works at AT&T, which, by the way, has almost 20 different pension plans just in AT&T. And the plan that she's on, they can take their pension the day after they retire or the first of the month following their retirement. So very complicated in many cases. It's very important to know the rules so that you don't miss an opportunity to take your pension at the optimal time frame that produced the highest lump sum. The look back period has to do with what months or quarters or years they're looking at when they're taking these corporate bond interest rates into consideration. For example, that same client that I mentioned at AT&T, they changed the interest rates on that pension plan annually, only once a year. And so, as you can imagine, when they change the interest rates only one time per year, those rates have the potential of fluctuating pretty wildly on a year-by-year basis compared to, for instance, a company that changes their interest rates monthly. You might not see as big of a variance from month to month, but they're changing very often, every single month. And it becomes even more important for you to watch them the more frequently these interest rates are changing, because it could mean changing the optimal retirement date to maximize what you walk away from the company with. It could mean needing to work longer because interest rates have gone up and produced a lower lump sum, and now you need to save more in your 401k, for example. Or it could mean just changing your retirement date just by a couple days to get tens of thousands of dollars more into your retirement plan. These are all possible scenarios. Or it might mean not even changing your retirement date, but deferring the election of your pension into a later month or a later quarter or even a later year, so as to maximize what you walk away from the company with, while still getting your money as soon as possible, which has advantages on both the lump sum as well as the annuity, but could have some potential disadvantages depending on how your company is looking at these interest rates. So very important to know your rules. If you're not sure about how your company observes this, call us. We may know offhand just because we have clients from companies all over the country. If we don't, we will tell you and guide you in how to find this information, typically by either reading your summary plan description on your pension or pulling up your pension model or running some different scenarios and then backing into the interest rates that they use, as well as the look back period that's important to know as you go into this decision on not only how to take your pension, but when to take your pension. Now we've done an example here. I'll zoom this in so it's a little bit larger. These are the IRS published segment rates. These are the rates that most corporate pensions use for calculating lump sums. And you'll see that there's actually 3 different rates for every month. We've only gone back the most recent 5 months that have available data. And typically the IRS doesn't publish these rates until the 3rd week of the following month. So here we are at the end of September. We just had the August rates made available to us last week, which is unfortunate in some cases, especially when the look back period is a very short period of time. But we've tracked these very closely because sometimes we don't have a very long window of when to make a decision. And sometimes rates are fluctuating to a degree that we need to know this information as quick as possible to make the best decision. We've seen interest rates climb pretty quickly in the last 2 years, which has resulted in lower lump sum payouts. We've seen this continue into this year. Rates actually dropped a little bit earlier in the year, which you don't really see here on this table, but they started climbing again in April, and we've seen them climb, especially for the second segment interest rate, which has the largest weighting in this calculation. But for all of these rates, they've climbed, and they all have resulted in lower lump sum payouts for defined benefit plans that have a default payment option as an annuity. So very important to watch these. We're happy to spend some time with you on a one-on-one basis to run projections of different interest rate assumptions. But I'll tell you, typically, the rule of thumb that we remember is for every 1% increase to interest rates, it's close to a 10% drop in your lump sum, and maybe even more than a 10% drop if you're still pretty young in your career, especially for somebody who's in their early 50s or even in your mid 50s. It might be close to a 12% drop in your lump sum for every 1% increase to these interest rates. So pay close attention to them. Let us know if you have interest in spending a few minutes on the phone just going through your pension modeler so we can point out some things to you. Found that to be a pretty helpful exercise. Even if you're not a client yet, and even if you maybe don't even plan on becoming a client because you're going to do things on your own or you have an advisor you're already happy with, we're still delighted to spend some time with you because we're confident, A, that we can add some value to your retirement strategy. And all we ask, if that's the case, is that you help us grow our business by maybe referring us to some of your coworkers that don't have a plan yet on who they're going to work with as an advisory firm. Now, unfortunately, what we found statistically is that 74% of Americans over the age of 50 do not have a written plan for their retirement. And from where we're standing, this is not acceptable. There's no reason, especially with companies like the Retirement Group and many others that will put a plan together for you on a complimentary basis in an effort to get to know you and hopefully earn your business. There's no reason to not have a plan. So take advantage of ours if you haven't done so already, or have us updated if it's been a while since we have updated your plans, because a lot has changed in the last year, especially with the interest rates that affect not only pension lump sums, but also the bond and fixed income markets. If you'd like to have a phone call with us, have us run a cash flow analysis for you, or just ask some questions, you can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. You can call us at 800-900-5867, or you can even take a picture of this QR code here on the bottom left, which will get you onto either my calendar or one of my colleagues who specializes in retirement income planning. And we're happy to put that cash flow analysis together for you if you like, although it's not necessary. And we also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn if you're not doing so already, as that's where we publish our live webinars going through, in some cases, generic retirement planning like we've talked about today, but in many cases, specific retirement planning for your company. It's a great way to keep up to speed with a lot of the changes that are happening in the retirement planning world, as well as in your company benefits plans. So with that, we do still have a few minutes left. So I'm going to pass it back to Sam in case there was any questions that came up today. We'll try to get through them, Sam.
Hey, Tyson. Yes, we got a few great questions that I want to make sure you answer before we end today. And a quick reminder, once again, if he does not get to all questions, we apologize. We're trying to respect everybody's time this afternoon. Please use the link that I've entered into the chat. You can book an appointment with either Tyson or one of his colleagues and speak to them further about any concerns you may have. Tyson, question 1. Can I defer my pension once I retire and wait until the rates drop in the future?
Great question. Depends on your plan. In most cases I've seen, The company will allow you to do that. There's some companies that I've seen, they give you a 90-day window or a 60-day window to make a decision. A lot of companies have a normal retirement age of 65, wherein you could defer your pension election until 65. And if you haven't elected it, then it just automatically gets commenced on or soon after your 65th birthday. So every plan's a little bit different. I would encourage you to call us and we'll help you figure that out if we don't know it already.
Alrighty, thank you, Tyson. Next question. What's a look back and how does it work?
Yeah, so that we did a slide, but I kind of breezed over it. Essentially, the company is using interest rates from the past to calculate your pension today. It's helpful because it gives you a bit of a crystal ball or knowledge about what direction your lump sum is going to go in the future. For instance, if my company has a 2-quarter look back on interest rates, and I know interest rates were lower 2 quarters ago than they are today, I know that it's probably more favorable for me to take my lump sum now versus waiting 1 or 2 quarters while interest rates go up and my lump sum goes down. So again, every company observes this differently, but it essentially is a heads up on what direction interest rates will be going, and as a result, what direction your lump sum will be going, and some information to make good decisions on your retirement.
Thank you, Tyson. Next question. Last question. How should I use the direction of the rates in the look back to optimize my retirement planning?
The best advice I have is to run pension projections early and often. Work with a specialist, whether it's us or one of our peers in the industry that knows your company's benefits plans and specializes in working with retirees specifically, so that you can not only pick the optimal pension benefit option, which might not be the lump sum, by the way, but especially if you're taking the lump sum, be cognizant of what direction rates are going, and then also, run projections early enough so that you can model what happens to your pension if interest rates go up 1% or if they go up 2% over the next 3, 4, 5 years as you approach retirement. And if that does happen, now you're planning conservatively, and maybe you focus on putting more money in your 401k to make up for to offset the losses in your lump sum. Or maybe you just plan to spend a little bit less in retirement or work a little bit longer to make up for the potential losses that are out of our control with regards to what direction interest rates are going.
That was all of the questions we had time for today, Tyson. Do you want to make any closing remarks before we end today?
I think we covered a lot today. Thanks, Sam, for the help. Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar series. Everybody have a good, safe rest of your week. We hope to talk to you all very soon.
Thank you.